Hello and welcome. My name is Kimberley. I'm co-founder of ThriveNow Education. We're here to talk to you because we believe that the world has changed and education must change with it. At ThriveNow, our core belief is simple but transformative. Well-being must be at the heart of learning in order for young people to thrive in an uncertain and fast-changing world. We're moving beyond the traditional metrics of knowing and toward a journey where young people are nurtured with the courage and kindness and skills to thrive in a transforming and complex and automated future. My journey to co-founding ThriveNow was fueled by the tension between systems. Having worked across state-maintained and progressive independent sectors, I saw that even the most talented and compassionate teachers are often restricted by this system that prioritizes curriculum coverage over individual student needs. So what, you may ask? Well, the so what is that these barriers prevent the deep relational learning required for true development. ThriveNow removes those restrictions, creating a space where teachers can finally lead with creativity and flexibility that the families actually need in order for their young people to flourish. For too long, we know that the educational landscape has forced parents into heartbreaking compromise, and we hear these from these parents every day. We've been told that we must choose between this sort of exam factory model, and that's the only path to a successful future, where grades are harvested really at the expense of the child's sort of holistic development and well-being. And this risks the child's capacity to take care of themselves now and in the future. So then when parents look at the more progressive alternatives, they're led to believe that these are thin academically. Most often that's not the case, but really that was our starting point to making sure that what we're developing is both academically robust, but also that well-being is at the core of what we do. So what if education did prepare our children for the exams that they currently need to take at 16 in order to follow the paths onwards to college and university, or even to have the foundational knowledge and understanding to start small businesses or whatever it is that they want to do at that age? But also making sure that that's not at the cost of their sense of well-being and sense of purpose and sense of agency in this world. We don't have to view academic excellence and profound well-being as competing interests. For us, they're one and the same. So when a child is seen and regulated and tethered to a sense of inner purpose, our experience is that their capacity for rigorous intellectual work doesn't just improve, it actually flourishes, as does motivation. So to move this vision from a sort of a what if that was possible to how that is possible in terms of what we've built within our community, we'd like to share our 4 foundational pillars that act as the kind of steady architecture for young people's growth, and really is the essence of the ThriveNow Framework. So, a thriving education, obviously, we need structure, we need stability, we need to know what the parameters are, especially in relation to compliance, but also so that when young people and their families are investing in this kind of education, they know what they're showing up for. So, whilst these pillars are kind of the bearing walls, if you will, of this approach, and the foundations really are around well-being. So these are the promises that we're making to children and young people. We're cultivating the conditions for a thriving community and what that looks like, so that the young people feel a sense of safety and belonging, and therefore their basic needs are being met. But beyond that, they're able to learn and grow in a way that suits them, but also meets the needs of growing communities, societies, and the global world that we now live in. In order to do that, we use inquiry-led pedagogy. So this really is the pedagogy is the house of the teaching. So instead of being somebody at the front of the class that just transmits knowledge, we're really inviting a new way a role for the teacher to invite curiosity that often sort of conventional schooling extinguishes, sadly. We'll speak a lot about transdisciplinary curriculum, and you can watch some of our other videos if you want to look a little bit more deeply into the what's and the hows of that. But what we mean by this essentially is that we're refusing to sort of stay in this siloed existence of subjects that are separate in the world, whereas we prefer to look at it as a whole, so where science and art meet ethics to enable young people to solve real world problems. And then if we've got the community and the hows and the relational trauma-informed pedagogy, if we've got the what's in terms of the curriculum, the final piece of the puzzle is the multimodal formative assessment. And really, this is just developing simple feedback loops that feel like a conversation rather than a verdict. And again, we've got an entirely separate video where you can learn more about that. We'll just sort of touch upon the basics here. This is really to keep the rigor in what we're doing. How can we assess that we're doing well, but also they're the kinds of things like executive functioning skills so that young people can do that for themselves. And these are the things that they're going to be needing in their lives, not just in their school period. So together, these pillars create a synergy that sort of transforms the young person from a passive passenger to a capable, self-aware navigator of their own education, which is really what we want. While these pillars provide the how, we believe that true transformation also requires us to consider the where, which brings us on to our next introduction. So we identify as a small rational school. So we're really taking a first principles approach to what is the purpose of education. And if we're looking at that, then where does education need to happen? Where is going to be the most well-being focused and for want of a better word, efficient way to create the environment for the best possible learning outcomes and learning experience. So we reject the idea that a single concrete building is the best environment for every type of learning. Certainly at the age group that we are considering here, which is secondary age learning, but equally primary. So our campus, instead of having a single building, is a network of sort of purposeful home sites designed to fit the task at hand. So 2 days a week, roughly, we will gather at the sort of the family hub, which will look conventionally like a school. And this will sort of ground us, connect us with the broader school network, and give us a kind of a rhythm to our days that represents more of a kind of conventional approach to teaching and learning. And then another 2 days are spent at a nature hub centered around a shepherd's hut. This all-weather base is really vital. We all know how we feel when it's pouring with rain, even when you're very well dressed. It's important to be outside, but it's also important to have access to that level of comfort outside and warmth, and that kind of sense of homeliness. So at the shepherd's hut, we will be doing things like woodcraft, nature play, all the things that kind of ground us and give us a sense that we know that gives us a sense of well-being, the sensory regulation that we need, and the physical grounding that that teenagers are like desperately need to thrive, especially with so much going on in their adolescent brains and bodies. I certainly remember how I felt at that age, and that would have just been beautifully medicinal for me, and still is for me as a grown-up. So finally, we venture out into our community through library visits, museums, social impact groups, sports facilities, basically anywhere else that feels meaningful for learning, for real life, meaningful, relevant learning to happen, but also tethers us more securely to our local community and brings that sort of community feel back to where we grow up and where we live. So here, young people aren't just studying in a room, they're using professional research tools, they're partnering with local voluntary groups to see their projects really come alive, the things that they're developing in school really come alive in their local community. And by co-building safely across these diverse spaces, we ensure that every young person views the entire world as their kind of learning laboratory. In these varied environments, the most critical element remains the quality of adults standing beside your child or young person, and that's sort of where we're turning to next. So Teachers, this is about the inquiry-led pedagogy, which is the second pillar. So in our model, the teacher's role sort of undergoes a radical evolution, and all teachers that I've spoken to about this feel very positive about this. They're yearning to be able to offer these children and young people a really nurturing environment where they can bring out their passion and love for the subjects and subject areas they do, but also so that they can care for these young people. I don't know a single teacher who goes into education that doesn't care about young people and want to go about it in a really compassionate and creative way. So this goes from the sort of teacher becoming a lecturer at the front of the room more to a guide, a mentor, and sort of a partner in discovery, but with all those really core important things at their fingertips that we know that they will need about trauma-informed practice, about developmental, appropriately developmental stages that young people are going through, but also that so that they can be reactive to the young people's needs that are in front of them. So in order to do that, we select our staff not just for their academic expertise, but for their mastery of relational trauma-informed practice. We operate on a singular philosophy that we must be able to support the adults so that the adults can support the children and the young people. It's classic to kind of see in programs, super stressed teachers, and teachers are super stressed. We need to be taking care of these amazing humans that are taking care of our children and young people. They really are the kind of the front of house of education and the learning experience. So our teachers and learning coaches are never left to kind of pour from an empty cup. I know how that feels myself, being forced to go in when you're sick, when you've got a lot going on, when you're taking on the responsibility for the emotional regulation of these young people and often their families too. So they receive confidential coaching, counselling, and we also align to really carefully selected organisations and groups to stay at the cutting edge of blended and well-researched learning. And this is for both neurotypical and neurodiverse learners. So why does this matter for your child? Because, if a teacher who's sort of coached and regulated and professionally nourished can then remain the kind of the calm port, if you will, for your child during the most turbulent moments of their teenage years. I know I needed that in mine. So a trauma-informed environment is what we're really talking about. And it's not just built on policies. Policies are important for the infrastructure. And we have that. They're robust, they're Ofsted accredited, but really this is about building the emotional availability of these guides, and a lot of role modelling comes into that as well. So with these stable guides in place, that we can begin to on the work of sort of building the curriculum and the hidden curriculum that will define that sort of future success in what the young people can access in their lives. And that's what we're going to do next, is to look at developing executive functioning, not just as an explicit but an implicit tool within the curriculum. That's an important role that their teachers will develop. So executive functioning, for those who don't know it, is it's like the cognitive engine, if you will, of a successful life. So it's like a CEO of your brain, working out what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and who it needs to be done by, and who can help. So it's the ability to plan, to focus, to pivot when things go wrong. So it's really, really essential. And conventionally, we don't see enough of this in mainstream schools. And often it's led to sort of outsourcing or as an add-on. But our belief is that this really should be at the core of the learning. So it's, as I say, with the ThriveNow curriculum and the ThriveNow approach, it's foundational. So through inquiry, we build planning skills using Think Aloud protocols, a practice where young people narrate and plan their thought processes, to catch out mistakes, to refine their logic, to think about, and to develop the metacognitive capacity. So the ability to learn how to learn and to put together sort of the different parts of their bodies and brains to work in the most successful way, the most conducive way to learning. So this really, what it does is it shifts the learner from being a passive recipient of information, just sitting there, things being expected for things to go in, which is bizarre anyway. Not least, it's well researched now that that's not how young people learn, especially at this age. But also in relation to the growth of AI and the role that that plays in lives and the workforce. We're sort of training or teaching children all the wrong things. We need to be bringing out those more humane, as I say, meta-social, meta-emotional capabilities that really is still such a human strength, and AI can't yet compete with. So this sort of shifts the student from being this passive recipient of information to self-directed, resilient, being able to shift when things come their way, so that we're not just teaching them what to think, but how to manage the machinery of their own minds. And this cognitive flexibility is what will allow them to thrive in a 21st century AI-driven landscape that rewards adaptability over rote memorization. Okay, so I hope you're still with me. So alongside that, we do honour the gatekeeping reality of GCSEs, but we refuse to let them define one's child's worth. When I think about my own children who are all in primary but sort of heading towards secondary, I don't want them to just regurgitate texts to pass an exam. And I don't want their worth as a human being to be graded in that way. That being said, I do still want them to have access to these sort of tokens or gateways that will enable them to, if they want to study further or go into college or build a business or whatever it is that they need, there are still these kind of core GCSEs. There are amazing organisations like Rethinking Assessment who are doing great work to adjust that. But for now, there will still be these core GCSEs. So we'll be teaching English, maths, sciences, and design and technology all the way through as these sort of core components. But we'll be doing it through a mastery program, which looks slightly different. And we talk more about our mastery program in one of our other videos. So please do check that out if you want to know more. So this is, and we've got many tools that we're developing to support that. So we're using a sort of a sophisticated hybrid model, specialist online tutors to provide the expert instruction, and our in-person class teachers provide the kind of relational support to ensure that no one's left behind. So you're really getting the best of both worlds. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the transdisciplinary curriculum as one of our pillars, and it's amazing, this beautiful AI project weaver that we have developed and we're using right now in practice. So instead of sort of keeping subjects to their silos, which is very unlike we would use them in the world. There's a reason that they're that way, and that's sort of covered in mastery, but there has to be a way that we can apply it, or children just lose motivation. And again, I draw so much when I'm talking and from talking about and researching this from my own experiences in school, where I would be constantly asking, what's this got to do with anything? Like, why are we being asked to do this? So it's not always possible for young people at that age to realize why it's useful, and also for that some things aren't that useful, but we just have to do it to get through the GCSEs, or there's other reasons that we're going to do it. So what we've created is this AI project weaver alongside the Novacene, the Novus Learning Network, which we talk often about, an amazing community of humans, and really challenging the status quo and coming up with really relational and wonderful approaches, tools, equipment, consultancy. So check them out. So within this, there's the AI Project Weaver, which helps us to co-design bespoke inquiry projects. And this really bridges the gap between the academics and the real world. So what happens is, on the back end, you've got all the GCSE content from the national curriculum that's been inputted, plus the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we have worked it to develop things like embodied learning and tailored it to not just a generic environment, but it can be tailored to very specific geographical areas and climates, and that will alter the output that you get. So, for example, a teacher can use this, or a young person can use this. Ideally, it will be used together. to co-create things. We share more about this in one of our other videos. So if you want a practical example of how this works, check it out. But a student may ask, what will my life look like in 20 years' time? They'll find themselves using the AI project weaver to weave together geography, citizenship, English, and many other subjects, all the while addressing UN sustainable goals as well. And this will come up with a personalised programme of study alongside rubrics and things that will help them to know how they are developing and how their learning is going. So I guess the AI handles the logistical weaving of the curriculum standards, which frees up the humans, the teacher that I talked about at the beginning, to really develop on relational practice, creativity, and sort of intellectual breakthroughs and celebrations that happen in the moment. So it really does help with that flexibility. This ensures that every hour of study is felt as like meaningful contribution to the young person's own future, rather than something that is just been handed down to them by a curriculum or an approach that they don't have any connection to. So this combination of high academic standards and deep personal meaning is what we call sort of soulful rigour. For more on how this works in practice, and a walk around of these tools, as I mentioned, please do watch there's another video on our channel on pedagogy and curriculum, and yes, you'll find that there. So we've talked a little bit, I just mentioned Soulful Rigour, and when I sometimes bring this up to people, they say, wow, that sounds a bit out there. It's a little bit airy-fairy for me. What does that actually mean? So really, it is the intersection of high standards and also high empathy, and one doesn't have to come at the cost of the other. And in fact, we know that the future job market won't just ask what children and young people know. It will ask who they are and how they solve problems. And these are going to be the really important things that we need to be actively showing and developing within role modeling within our learning schools and learning environments. We prepare them for this by sort of cultivating different sort of roles or hats that they can wear. We've got things like data detectives, so using data to drive ethical action, so one can't come without the other. Our story weavers apply systems thinking to understand how nature and humanity interact, looking at past, present, and future. And really importantly for me, and this really is the core, this is where I feel so passionately about, is the wellbeing leads. So the practice of emotional intelligence and it's just so required to lead ourselves and design our worlds, our inner worlds, and recognize what our values are and how we want to show up, and then how we do that in reality, and respect other people's values as well. So that feels really exciting, our work there. So again, we explain more on that later. So these roles are the antidote to uncertainty of the future, we feel. Certainly for now, these will also progress. This isn't static work that we're doing. So moving beyond sort of simple subjects to offer graduates the ethical and complex problem solving capacities that they need, and that the world, quite honestly, I feel is waiting for. So to ensure students are really embodying these roles, we must track their progress in a way that respects their individual journey, so that they don't feel like it's something that's out of their grasp. And that brings us on nicely to tackling and tracking what matters with regard to growth, meaning, and well-being. So in most schools, assessment is a one-way judgment culminating in GCSEs. We know that. It's a well-heard story. We also know the risks of that in terms of mental well-being. And it's, this is not something that we can take lightly anymore. We've got an extraordinary amount of children. I talk about this in my TEDx talk. Extraordinary amount of children and young people who are physically harming themselves because of the stress and anxiety that school and the toxic environment in schools, largely due to the stress from GCSEs, are creating for them. And those that manage to get out, who are absent, then miss out on all the positive sides of learning. So at ThriveNow, we're looking at assessment. Instead of a summative at the end, it's formative. So we are helping young people to use what they know about themselves and each other to guide each other forward in the next steps. And we do this by triangulation, basically. So we measure growth through rich and co-created picture involving the students and the teachers and external experts. And so that's then recorded within the learner portfolio, and then within that there's the learner dashboard, which provides co-created rubrics. So basically rubrics are so normally when a child or young person experiences this, or a child or young person is in a lesson, there's a learning objective, and there's almost 1, 2, 3 new ones per lesson per day, and it's extraordinarily difficult for the young person to keep track of them and stay on top of them. And honestly, it's highly unmotivating. And so what we're doing is we're co-creating these rubrics with the young people, so that they've come from them, they know why they're doing them, and there's a sense of purpose and therefore motivation for reaching whatever the goal that is. And that's stored on the learner dashboard, so they have a record of that, and it's also tracked with and by the teacher. This creates sort of maps of meaning that then capture where your child or young person is making deep cognitive connections. And again, the young person is part of that. It's not something that they don't know where they're at. It's not that they're totally involved in this whole process. So this multimodal approach values growth over simple grading. It's much more healthy for their well-being, and it provides a much more accurate and much more human reflection of a child's progress than a single letter on a page or a summative report of a paragraph where you've just covered what you've taught in a term, which for me, it feels a bit irrelevant as a parent and as a teacher. So for more on how this works in practice and kind of a walk around of the tools we use, please watch our other videos on multimodal formative assessment, which is our 4th pillar. It's linked. I think we're going to link it in the notes, so watch out for that. And then at the heart of this reflection is really the wellbeing compass. And the wellbeing compass is, again, another really important thing that we've developed. It's a tool that helps our students and young people navigate their own internal world, which I think really is a forgotten area in many areas, in many schools. So the Wellbeing Index is something that we've evolved, as I mentioned, but it's actually surprisingly, since I've left teaching in mainstream schools, something I've learned on my personal journey of co-developing ThriveNow. And so, this is really well researched. We've also been working with Thoughtbox Education, Triple Wellbeing, an amazing organization as well. So definitely check them out if you haven't already. And so what we're really attending to here is making sure that we're living from our values, and then understanding how we can communicate those values to others respectfully, and then how they fit within the world that we find ourselves in, both locally and more globally. So emotional health really is the foundation of this. Our Wellbeing Compass provides a shared language for young people to articulate their inner climate. This is both used as text, but also through symbols as well. And it's really sort of developing, recording, and understanding and development of values, their actions, how their values are seen in action, their emotions and emotional regulation, and this sense and idea of embodied learning, which we're really integrating into everything that we do, because it's not just the brain that we learn with, we learn as a whole human. And so we've done a lot of research on this, and that's really at the forefront of our work and of the Wellbeing Compass. So in essence, the young people are learning how to tell us what they're feeling, what their sense of purpose is, and these are informing their academic and personal choices, ensuring that the soul the soulful rigour is never an afterthought. So a ThriveNow graduate will emerge with a deep sense of who they are, grounded in a clear understanding of what they stand for, how they wish to show up in the world, what they can do when they don't show up in the world. It's not something they have to be self-critical of. They'll possess a sort of a physical, authentic map of meaning, developed through reflective journals and the Wellbeing Compass and their learner portfolios. And these are all tools that allow them to articulate their values and regulate their emotions with presence and regulation. So this ensures that they leave school and their education experience not just with the knowledge, but with the courage and the kindness to thrive. So crucially, these graduates will demonstrate highly developed executive functioning skills, allowing them to operate as independent and self-directed learners who are not reliant upon other people to tell them always what they need to do. By explicitly learning these skills like planning and time management with a culture that fosters agency, we feel that they'll be able to justify their choices better, manage their own paths, whether that's through continued education or whether they want to leave education altogether and do something entirely different. And then beyond exams, and this is, I've been talking to the co-founders and the team at ThriveNow, and really, we just want to really really understand what it means to nurture this overused phrase, like lifelong love of learning. Like, what is that, and like, how do we make sure they keep hold of that and we don't dull it out of them? So obviously the tools that we're developing and using really enable that, but fundamentally this is about human connection. It's about an awareness of how we have to look after our planet, because if we don't, there will be no planet. And it shouldn't be the responsibility of our young people to address that, and yet we have to be socially responsible and make sure that we're intentionally and actively introducing what really matters to these young people to help them thrive. So I think that's the main crux of what we're creating. The final piece that we haven't touched upon, which is super important, obviously, is the partnership with parents. Children never come as single units. They come as part of a bigger unit, a bigger community, which is their family community and networks of families of communities. So what we're really encouraging and we're laying the foundation for is a willing and open partnership with parents. This is just a non-negotiable for student success, for young people's success. And we want you to feel as informed and confident as your child, so that you can communicate this slightly different way of learning, so that you understand it for yourselves, but also invariably family members, strangers, other parents, they often ask, they're interested, but they want to know the ins and the outs. And parents aren't always given the language or the understanding of how to do that. And I think it's very reassuring as well. You want, as a parent, you want to know the back end of why this works, the research that's gone behind it. And that's why we provide a really structured parent onboarding pathway. We provide monthly workshops on topics like supporting executive functioning skills, what happens when learning doesn't go to plan, what happens when our young people are disengaged, because even with this approach, there will be times when young people will be disengaged. And really our task is to find out why that is. And it might just be they need a break. Like, it's really intense, all of this stuff at that age, as well as all of the other bodily functions that they're managing and the emotional regulation. Or it might just be that we haven't quite got something right in the environment and we just need to tweak it. And so really we need to be working with parents in order to do that, and sharing information on how we're doing that, so that, that they can do things at home and that we can do things in schools and learning environments that carry through from their home environment too. So really getting the best of all worlds. They will also be weekly learning snapshots through the learner portfolios. So parents are never wondering kind of what their child's doing, especially when they come home and the child's like, "I've done nothing today." Although I have to say, when you teach and learn in a different way, I find that children and young people are buzzing and they want to talk about it, and quite often they bring that learning home. But in the case that they don't, there is this partnership where there's transparency around what's happening at school. So we're providing you the resources and the toolkits and the routines for wellbeing, both at home and at school, in terms of their learning, growth, and development. Because this partnership is so intimate, we're very intentional about the scale and the fit of our community. Even videos like this help to kind of underpin what we're about, why we're doing it. I'm doing it because I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for many, many years. I've researched for many years. I did my master's. And then I had my own family, and it became even more important for me to not just go with the status quo, but step out and into something more rational. I've talked about that before, and more well-being focused, because that really is the core of learning and the future. So joining ThriveNow, it's a journey of alignment. It's not just an application. First step is expression of interest. We'll share more information, including prospectus. We've got these videos and more that we'll be uploading. And then obviously inviting you to ask any questions that you have. And I'm sure there'll be plenty. And we love answering questions. They're great because they help us to really think as well. And then you'll be invited to fill out an admissions form so that we can organise a family needs meeting. Following this, there'll be an invitation to come for an open day where your young person can experience ThriveNow atmosphere firsthand. And if it all feels like a good fit from there, we will then invite you to sign up, allowing us to begin a summer term onboarding program for you and your young person. And this sort of timeline is our way of ensuring that every family who joins us is really ready for the transformation ahead. You're not just kind of plopped in at the beginning of September feeling, crumbs, what's going on here and what should I be doing and who are these people? And safety and emotional safety is so important and so underestimated. So a lot of information there. And as I say, we've got 2 more videos as well. This is a really well thought out, well considered, well researched approach. We're not working in isolation here. We're working with so many amazing organizations and people, humans, schools, alternative provisions, universities, businesses. This has been vetted by them all, and we're continuing to work with them to make sure that this really is the best rational offer it can be. It might not be for everyone, but it's definitely our guiding star is, can we show up better for our young people? And yes, we can. And this is our offering to that end. It's a hopeful response to a complex world. We want to nurture a generation equipped not just with skills, but with the courage and kindness to thrive. Our mission is to reimagine school as a space not just for knowing, but for becoming. And I think there's an important distinction there. We talk about that in our LinkedIn posts. If you feel a pull to something that's a little bit different, like a more rational approach or a more rational future for your child, one that's more humane, and so that they're ready for this radical change that we're about to go through. It's certainly with the introduction of AI, it's already changed our world. We need to be changing our education systems to match that, so that we can be informed and not just responding to what's going on around us. We would really encourage you to reach out to us. We like to collaborate, we like to ask questions, and we hope that you have enjoyed this presentation, this tour of the foundations of the ThriveNow approach. We're actively seeking families who share our families, organisations, schools, communities who want to share our inclusive and neuro-affirming ethos. We believe in strong collaborative partnerships between home, school, and the local community, and all working together to support your child to thrive. So thank you if you've lasted this long. I'm happy that you're here with us, and I look forward to meeting you in the future. Bye for now.